You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I can't thank everybody enough. I know I do it every single week, but I have to do it because you've been so supportive and sharing our podcast. And I know we're on various radio stations as well. But sharing it with friends and family, and our listeners are growing each and every day. So thank you so much. I know many of you listen to it, maybe on your walks in the morning or on your treadmill, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, or you go right to our website at boomerstodayradio.com. or our free app. You could download the free app, Boomers Today app, on your iPhone or Android phone. Keep up to date on all these wonderful podcasts. And I say wonderful. It's not that the podcast is wonderful. It's our guests are wonderful. And we have another wonderful guest today, Margie Hackbarth, who has worked in healthcare, communications, administration for more than 30 years. And she calls herself a cheerleader for older adults. We'll learn why in just a moment. Margie authored, I should have asked you, Margie, how to pronounce it. Amaging? How do you pronounce that?
Amaging.
Amaging. Oh, just like amazing. Okay. Amaging. Growing old on purpose. It's about reframing our attitudes on aging and focusing on the amazing potential of older adults. She introduces a framework for affirmations to help older adults achieve goals and discusses the need for affirmations due to age bias in our culture and in our own minds. Margie, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Sorry, I botched the name. I should have realized that, but thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's quite all right and understandable. I say in a number of places in the book that it rhymes with amazing for just that reason. I know that it's a new word and it's not readily heard by people. So yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, well, I'd love to know more about how you came up with the name. I'm always interested on kind of the catalyst of why people wrote their book. I've mentioned you before that I'm an author as well, and I always get that question, what was the catalyst that made you write the book? So tell us a little more about that, the name and why you wrote the book.
Sure. Well, the name came later, but the book writing came first, and it did take me a while. It came together over the course of a couple of years, actually, but I was inspired early in my career, many years ago. I worked in a hospital setting, and I worked very closely with hospital volunteers, and many of them were older, and I was pretty, they influenced me in good ways. They shared their wisdom, their humor. I had a lot of fun times working with the volunteers, and they shared their life experiences with me. They were doing amazing things for the hospital, in their communities, for their families, and they just left a fabulous impression on me. And I was young. I was in my early 20s, so I was impressionable, so it stuck with me over time. And then later in my career, I had an opportunity to work in geriatrics for a health system as a service line administrator in healthy aging. And then I learned more about healthy aging, positive aging, and the detriment of age bias, especially on our health. So I felt like people need to know this stuff, and I wrote a book. So that's kind of the sort of it, how the book came to be. The title, for the longest time, I was going to call it something different, End on a High Note. yet I felt like just what I know about older adults, they don't like to think about the end. And I felt like that might be a little too negative, and I really wanted to reframe how we think about growing older. So that's kind of why I moved more towards something like amazing, the amazing things that older adults are doing, and how affirmations can help us achieve goals as we age, and why we need affirmations because of age bias, as you already mentioned.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Ageism, age bias. It's a problem. As you know, I work in the senior care industry as well, and have been for quite a long time. But tell us a little bit about what you've seen relative to that.
Well, as I mentioned, I was inspired by people who were doing amazing things early in my career, and then yet as I lived, it's easy to see that people can, and myself included, can have a negative attitude about growing older, or sometimes we just make assumptions that now that I'm getting to a certain age, I won't be able to do certain things anymore, or I need to make adaptations that will take away some of the fun and some of the joy that I've had in my life. So I think that that's how I've seen age bias myself. But in my research and in my work, learning about the research that was done by Becca Levi at Yale University, that really inspired me, knowing that she really researched how people's attitudes about growing older can influence so many things about their life, including their health outcomes. So I think the work by Becca Levi, I included in my book in chapter 4, and that's really probably what influenced me in my work as well.
So talk to us about the word, you use the word affirmations quite a bit, in my, when I was reading a little bit of your bio. Your bio is a lot longer than I read, but it was, you use the word affirmations quite a bit. So tell us a little bit about why affirmations.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was introduced to affirmations reading some of the works by Hal Elrod. He's also a published author, and he has written books mostly around this topic of making the most out of your day, especially in the morning. And so I'm trying to think of what the name of one of his really the morning or the miracle morning it's called. And one of the tools that he recommends for starting out your day is affirmations, which I had never given thought to. And so I did some research on affirmations and learned about the power and the science behind affirmations. And what I include in my book is a little bit different. It's really more tailored for older adults, and it's a framework. It's a set of coaching questions that we as older adults can walk through and answer the questions and reflect and think about what makes sense for us and where we want to go, what we want to do, and then use that as like a tool and coach yourself, inspire yourself, and encourage yourself to help offset age bias, to help achieve goals. So that's
gotcha. So give us maybe an example or two of what you refer to as affirmations.
Okay. So, well, as I mentioned, it's a set of coaching questions, and I'll share with you what those questions are. And then if you'd like, I'm happy to read a sample.
Great. Yeah. Just do a sample. That'd be great.
Okay. So the questions are, what do you really want? So really taking some time to pause and think about, well, what do I want? Because sometimes we're trying to solve problems, but we're solving the wrong problem. So really taking time to think about what it is that you really want, why you want it, and then what's a good attitude or a mindset that could support it. And then I also have a question around what hat or what new hat might you need to wear? And that kind of fits with some of the literature that encourages us to think about, do we need to become a different type of person? So for an older adult, I've included what new hat do you need to wear, thinking that older adults have already established their identities quite well, so it might just be a matter of temporarily wearing a new hat. And then how to action plan it out. How will you, what little baby steps can you take over time to achieve it? And then how will you encourage yourself? So that's the framework. And I have one I'd be happy to share with you if you'd like to hear more of a sample.
I would love to, yeah.
Okay. So one of the chapters in my book talks about growing friendships or having good friends and being a good friend as we grow older. And I include some of the literature around loneliness and the health implications of isolation for older adults. And so I've included with that then this affirmation as a sample. And throughout the book, I have sample affirmations. And I really encourage people, like, you can use this as it is or adapt it so that it resonates better with you. So this is the example then for the one on friendship that people are welcome to use or adapt as they see fit. And it starts out, what do you really want? I want to be a good friend and have good friends. What is your growth mindset to support this? I believe there are things I can proactively do to avoid loneliness and isolation. Why do you want it? I want to increase my friendships to improve my well-being and my physical health and to add more joy to my days. And then, what new hat will you wear? Describe what type of person you are willing to become. I am committed to reassess my inner friendship quotient and identify areas for improvement. And am I a person with integrity? This includes being trustworthy, honest, dependable, loyal, and more trusting of others. Are my behaviors in these areas consistent? Am I as caring as I could be with others? Caring people are empathetic, non-judgmental, good listeners, and helpful. Am I generally likable? Someone who is likable is pleasant and generally fun to be with and has self-confidence and a sense of humor. What are you committed to doing? I am committed to avoid activities that might be done by a loner, in solitary, or generally by myself as a rule. Instead, I will look for opportunities with others. I'll attend community events, volunteer, or go to church or faith functions. If I am invited to an event, I will accept the invitation whenever possible. Similarly, I will look for opportunities to invite other people to attend events with me. I will record, remember, and help celebrate birthdays and other special occasions involving my friends. How will you encourage yourself? Reinforce your affirmation with inspirational quotes, proverbs, or scripture to build momentum and achieve your goal. And then I have a couple quotes to inspire me in the area of friendship. And the first is, walking with a friend in the dark is better than walking alone in the light, by Helen Keller. And the next quote, Dear George, remember, no one is a failure who has friends, from It's a Wonderful Life. And lastly, I know it is wet and the sun is not sunny, but we have lots of good fun that is funny, by Dr. Seuss from The Cat in the Hat. So it's just one example of a variety of affirmations that I put in the book to support older adults and help them achieve different goals based on where they're at in their life.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Loneliness, especially with older adults, it's a horrible problem today, as I'm sure you know. So every little bit that we can do, and you have done to help with that. So we're going to take a real quick break here, Margie. When we come back, I'd like you to, let's talk about, older adults that are maybe going through the aches and pains and just have a tough time kind of getting to do some of the things you're recommending. But we'll talk about that when we come back, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Beyond Driving with Dignity, which is a division of Senior Care Authority, is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, you can go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with a senior care advisor and a Beyond Driving with Dignity specialist in your area. We're back with Margie Hackbarth, who is the author of Amaging. Did I get that right? Growing Old on Purpose. Growing Old on Purpose. So before we took that quick break, Margie, you were talking about some of the things you have in your book and the affirmations and, helping older adults deal, with loneliness. I guess, when those aches and pains start, what are your recommendations there where, it's just people that have a tough time just getting out of bed in the morning and they're hurting or whatever the case, their hip is hurting, this is hurting, their knee is hurting. How do they kind of get through that to do some of the things that you have recommended?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for asking that question, Frank. So I don't in any way want to minimize that because I worry that giving this impression that using affirmations and reframing your mindset and how you think about things can replace some of other types of self-cares, including medical care. However, I get it. The pain is real, and so is the fatigue, and I actually have a chapter on that. And so how I address that in my book, and I call it like the elephant in the room, because as we grow older, we do have more pain and more difficult symptoms that are associated with chronic health conditions, and in some cases, we have multiple chronic health conditions as we age. So I give a number of examples throughout the book of people who did experience pain and did experience difficult symptoms associated with whatever they were going through. I talk about one of the hospital volunteers who inspired me in many ways, and she had osteoporosis, which was very painful. She lived in assisted living in her later years, and that was a big challenge for someone who had been so independent for so long. Hal Elrod, I tell his story about his vehicle crash, his short-term memory loss, excruciating pain and fatigue that he had with cancer treatments later after that, and yet how affirmation supported him during those difficult times. I talk about Sarah, an incarcerated Christian who's experiencing mental anguish, loneliness, being in prison, and yet she believes in affirmations and they've been helpful to her. So I have some other examples of people who had very difficult times, yet I show how because of some of the things that the way that they've reframed their thinking, the way that they've used, if not affirmations, friendships, and some of the other topics in the book, they've been able to not overcome, but have a better quality of life as a result.
I want to make sure we don't run out of time before I ask you how people can get your book. I would think the book would be a wonderful gift from a adult child to a parent or other loved one, but why don't you share with us how people can get the book and any other contact information that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I do have a website for the book. It's Amaging, Amaging, or I should say www.amaging.info, info.com wasn't available. So that's why I went with amaging.info. And so I have available some printables that are free that people can access from my website. I have a sample affirmation worksheet. I have a sample chapter if anyone would like to kind of scroll through and peruse a chapter. I have a number of book club questions that are free and people can download from the website. And then I have a shareable e-card, a birthday card that you could use as an easy way to acknowledge, remember your friends and family members on their birthdays. So my real hope is that we do celebrate those birthdays, all of them.
Great. Now,
and information
go ahead.
about buying the book is there too. Sorry.
No, go ahead. That's fine. That's fine. Good. Well, that's great. So you could go to your website and order the book directly from your website, or are there other third-party resources that they can get the book from?
Yep. So you can go to my website, and then there are links to the different third-party locations like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a number of other online book retailers. I'm based out of central Wisconsin, so I've even listed some of the local bookstores in the area. But it is available at the major online retailers. So,
I wanted to ask also, do you do any consulting work, individual consulting work with families, or pretty much the information is in the book?
No, it's pretty much all in the book.
Great. Good. So what's your recommendation? Somebody that might be listening to this podcast right now and they have a loved one, a parent or other loved one that's kind of down, getting a little down in the dumps, not wanting, to go out. Maybe they had been involved in activities, but maybe not, getting a little depressed as they're aging. Maybe those aches and pains are starting. Just any words of wisdom to those people who are experiencing that?
Mm-hmm. I guess first I would want to empathize and say that is normal. And I think that's common for people to feel stuck due to their age, or maybe due to the chronic health conditions that they are facing. So taking a look at what are the resources that are available to me in my community, and then also reframing what's going on with you to look at it from a different perspective and see, yes, I have my limitations, but what are some possibilities that I could consider that could move me even baby steps in a better direction.
Yeah. Good. That's wonderful. So I know you, I took a quick peek at your website, and I think that it's wonderful, the free resources. I know you mentioned it just before, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, because you offer quite a bit on your website. I think you were being quite what's the word? I'm going to let you brag a little bit. I think you offer a lot more than you said, so maybe you could share a little more detail on the resources you provide on your website.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Again, it's www.amaging.info, And the Printable Affirmation worksheet is a fill-in-the-blank form that you can use. It includes the questions that I listed earlier, and I recommend people just take some time to reflect. It might not be something you would complete even in one sitting, and then fill it out. There's even a place for a small work plan, so you could have an action plan that supports it. And I recommend coming back to it 1 or 2 times a day, putting it on your calendar so that it doesn't just get filled out and maybe sit on the shelf somewhere. That's really the beauty and the benefit of affirmations, is that you repeatedly affirm what matters to you, what you can do, what your potential is. So that's the one resource, the Printable Affirmation worksheet. I also have a sample chapter, my friendship chapter. It's my favorite one, so that's why I put it out there as a sample chapter. And my thought is that people might want to share that with their friends and thank them. Send it to them. I think it's a PDF. You can send it as an attachment and thank them for the gift of friendship and let them know that they've made a difference in your life. So that was one suggestion. And then I also have a number of book club questions. I think they could be used by a Bible study group as well. I do have one chapter on strengthening your faith as you grow older. The bulk of the book is more secular. However, I have that chapter on strengthening faith. And then when we talk about how can I encourage myself, and I share sample quotes and inspirational sayings, I do throw a Bible verse in from time to time. So that's why I want to make clear that it's a Christian, it has a Christian focus. And then I already mentioned the shareable birthday card as well.
Right, good. Margie, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers today. I really appreciate it. Check it out, amaging.info, amaging.info. Check it out. Thank you so much for joining us on Boomers today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I hugely appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Great. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on Boomers today. Please be safe out there, and we'll talk to everybody next week.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.